Hey guys, in this video, I want to talk about the cost of living in South Korea and compare it to my cost of living when I was in the United States. I've been in South Korea for a total of 10 years, came out here in 2013, and I've been out here the whole time except for 2020. My wife and I went back to the States for a year, and then we came back to Korea in 2021. So total about 10 years, although there was that break in 2020. So I can kind of compare prices from 2013 and 2020 stateside, and compare it to the cost of living that I've experienced here in South Korea. Now, of course, guys, this is all based on my personal experience, both as a single person, a single English teacher when I first came out here, also as a married person in South Korea. My wife's Korean, we're married, we have a daughter, so I have a kid as well, so we have those added expenses. And so hopefully with this video, you guys get a little bit of insight into, well, if you're trying to come to Korea, like what you can expect to need to budget for. And as you can see in the video, my wife and I are actually at Local Foods doing grocery shopping. I figured this would be a nice kind of background thing for you guys to watch while you hear me ramble about prices of things in Korea. By the way, Local Foods in Korea, guys, is amazing. It's all direct from the farmers. They're local, so the local farmers get to sell their produce and their goods directly here at Local Foods. So we don't have the middleman per se. They just give us fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that for, I would say, pretty decent prices. Although you'll see that some things in Korea are significantly more expensive than the United States. So since we're already looking at food, let's talk about food. So when I first came out to Korea, I'd say my first year I spent about maybe $500 to $700 a month in food. And that included going out to restaurants and stuff. It did not include, going out to the bars and drinking and clubbing and all that stuff. Just food, about $500 to $700 a month. And I'd say that because I actually I like going out to different restaurants and stuff. So I spent quite a bit of money on food just as a single person. But now I'm married, we have a daughter. I'd say, on the high side, we probably could spend like $2,000 a month on food. It really varies. And what changes how much we spend each month is, one, how much do we actually eat out, or how often do we eat out, and how much produce do we buy? Because produce in Korea can be a bit pricey depending on what you're buying. For example, a watermelon, in the States, where I'm from, a watermelon probably costs us about maybe $6, maybe $4 if it's on sale. But the similar size watermelon in Korea would cost about $20 to $23. It's ridiculous. It's actually cheaper to eat out at a restaurant for yourself than it is to go to the grocery store like we're doing here and buying groceries and then going back home and cooking them, particularly if you're talking about dishes that include a lot of fruits and vegetables. That's because the produce here is pretty pricey. Really good quality. I'd say it's probably better quality than stateside. That's my opinion. Yeah, it's actually cheaper to eat out at restaurants for a person that's by themselves. Obviously now with a daughter and a wife, it's probably cheaper to cook at home. Although we do order out. Ordering out is pretty cheap as well, cheaper than what you would pay in the States, because South Korea doesn't have a tipping culture. There's no tips. In the States, y'all are getting crazy with those tips, dude. Like 25, 35, 45 fucking percent on a tip, plus a delivery fee, dude. Like, there's delivery fees here, but you're talking paying like $3 to $5 for a delivery, but there's no tip. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like the tip is built into the price. Like, it's just the price, and you pay the delivery fee, and that's it. So you can actually save a lot of money by just not cooking. You know what I'm saying? And another thing to add on to that is, like, if you're cooking, you have food waste, right? And you have to dispose of your food waste in the food waste receptacles outside of your apartments. And you have to pay for that each month as part of your utility bill. Some things I think are way overpriced for produce. Like I said earlier, a watermelon costs like $20 to $25. But melons are pretty expensive. Some things are just expensive. Asparagus, avocados are crazy expensive out here. I think because they're all imported, and avocados are expensive anyways. Even stateside, they're pretty pricey, so you're paying a premium on things like that. But like the local cuisine stuff, garlic, mushrooms, lettuces, cabbages, these things are actually pretty fucking cheap. Bean sprouts, it's very cheap to eat the local cuisine. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to cook a lot. When it comes to like meats and stuff, US beef and Australian beef are not too expensive. Obviously, it's not cheaper than the United States, but Korean beef is crazy expensive, man. Like Hanu, it's called Hanu. Like Korean beef is you're gonna pay a premium because it's delicious. It's up there. It's fucking good and it's expensive. Pork is really cheap, especially samgyeopsal, like the pork belly is really cheap. Pork chops really cheap. Chicken's really cheap. Even though the prices have gone up because of inflation, they're still pretty inexpensive. Still more expensive in my experience than the United States, although it's not a huge difference. Like it's not something that's gonna like break your bank. Let's talk about housing. When I came to South Korea, I was an English teacher, and so my school subsidized my housing. I stayed there for a little while until I decided I want to move into an apartment of my choice, in which they paid me like a housing stipend to do that and stuff. The housing system in Korea is a bit different than the United States. I don't know if this is your first time hearing about the housing system in Korea or watching a video about it. But like in the States, you want to go rent an apartment, you have your first and last month's rent as deposit usually. And then you have a monthly rent, which these days I know are crazy. The range is too wide for me to give numbers. But most people aren't going to do the monthly rent system. It does exist. What's preferred and more common, especially for families, is what's called chunse, which is essentially a deposit-based rental system that is very different from the United States. So if you want to move into like a 3-bedroom apartment, in the States, you would pay last month's rent, anywhere from 2 to 4 to 6, whatever you pay, right? But your rent is very high. In Korea, with the chunse system, you have to put down a very large deposit. And we're talking, depending on where you are in the city, or you're outside the city, there's too many variables to list here. But I mean, you're talking about anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000, 100,000, sometimes even like $1 million deposit on an apartment, and then you pay a small amount of rent each month, plus your utilities and stuff, and then if it's a 2-year contract, you get your deposit back at the end. That's a huge difference from the States, because we just pay a lot in rent, but here we pay a lot in deposits. As far as buying a home, I'm not gonna give any info on buying a house, because it's just too many variables. Transportation. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I've also traveled to DC, to California, to Arizona, to Texas, to Florida. I've been all over because I was in the military. Public transportation in almost every place in the United States is pretty fucking shitty. Buses, trains, subways, they're all pretty much shit. Not the case in Korea. This stuff is clean and efficient and safe. You can't believe how clean it is until you actually get here and see it. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point is the cost to ride the subway is around $1, and then transfers are free. And the subway systems go everywhere, man. You can get anywhere in the city, in Seoul, with the subway. You can transfer from the subway to the bus. It's been a long time since I rode the subway because I drive now, but like, if I'm not mistaken, there's a small fee or no fee at all to transfer from the subway to the bus, or vice versa. The country's so small and the city is so congested that driving could be a fucking nightmare. And then gas is pretty expensive out here. If I go to the Korean gas station, I'm looking at paying something like, maybe $50 to $70, depending on what the prices are at the time. So yeah, gas is pretty expensive. It's just cheaper to do public transportation because public transportation is safe, clean, on time, effective, and it's just so convenient. Now, I don't live in Seoul anymore. I live outside of Seoul, and I have a car because we have a kid. So we do have our car note to pay and insurance and stuff. In terms of like healthcare, I will say that if you come in as an English teacher on an E2 visa, your company should provide healthcare. And I think you pay half, they pay half, and it's not that expensive compared to the States, especially if you're single with no family. Going to the doctor is super cheap. I actually made a video about this last year, I believe it was, about the cost to see a doctor in Korea. It's laughably cheap, and it's effective, it's fast, it's friendly, and it's just leaps and bounds more efficient than the United States. Childcare. We don't use childcare, so I can't give any insights on how much it costs to pay for a babysitter or whatever. I do know that sending your kid to public school is free. There's no fees involved with sending them to school. I mean, obviously there might be like supplies and stuff you gotta buy, but you don't have to pay to send them to the public schools. And so it's nice that way. And the schools are fucking awesome. I mean, yeah, I know there's horror stories about the education system, and I'm not trying to say that doesn't exist, but you don't have to worry about all the things you gotta worry about when you send your kids to the US school in terms of like their safety and guns and shootings and drugs. And yeah, that's just something, a little tidbit of information there for you. Overall, I would say that living in Korea is cheaper for most people that come from America than it is to live in America. And this is a sweeping generalization. Don't quote me and say, oh, DJ said it's cheap, but it's actually not. My circle of friends all agreed that their cost of living in Korea is cheaper. It does become more expensive, obviously, if you start eating at 5-star Michelin restaurants or you like to shop. I'm not going to talk about shopping and beer because honestly, I don't do that stuff anymore, so I don't know what the prices are these days, to be honest with you. Obviously, you can run your costs up, all right? We're talking about non-disposable type shit, like things you need to pay for is what the point of this video was. But you can easily run your costs up. You know, and I would recommend it if you're a new teacher coming out or you're a student coming out and you have a few extra dollars, you know, because your cost of living is lower. I mean, there's lots of places to travel around Korea. Japan's right next door. It's like an hour away. You know, you have Hong Kong, you have Singapore, you know, all of Malaysia, Okinawa. Australia's not close, but it ain't far. It's right down, you know, just take a 8 or 9 hour flight to Australia. I think it's 8 or 9 hours. There's just so much you can spend money on to enjoy and enrich your experience in South Korea. But if your goal is to come to South Korea, save a few bucks, and then move back to where your home country is, you can easily do that. You can do that for sure. Let's focus on teachers for a second. A lot of teachers look at the pay for the English teachers, and they say, well, most teachers, we're only getting paid 2.1 million won or 2.3 million won or 1.8 million won, I've seen even, for E2 visa teachers. Those are the one-year contracts that are sponsored by the school. And you're like, well, in dollars, that's only like $1,500 to $1,700 or $1,800 a month. That's shit. Yeah, kind of, but you know, like I said, your housing is usually covered. Healthcare is not expensive for even what you pay. It's very cheap to see the doctor. Even if you eat at restaurants for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, it's not that expensive unless you're going to Starbucks every day. So even though you're getting paid less on paper, you don't have the added cost that you would have to pay for in the States. To give an example, when I was stateside back in 2020, my wife and I went back to the States for a year. We were paying, about $4,300 a month just on the things I listed here, just for the most part. And this was during COVID. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot to spend money on. Everybody was on lockdown, and we still had outgoing fees of almost $4,300 a month. Yeah, I am not paying $4,300 a month in Korea. You know what I'm saying? That's not the situation at all. Especially if you're an English teacher, you should really just don't look at the dollar value of what they pay you. They're paying you based on what it costs to live on the local economy. And you're not going to get rich being an English teacher. All right, I'll just tell you that straight up. You're not going to get rich. But I have done English teaching. I have done grad school, 2 grad schools actually. I am doing my own business now. It's easy to save money in South Korea. If that's your goal, to buy a house or to pay off student loans or pay off bills or just build a little nest egg to go back stateside. Dude, it's so easy to do it here if you manage how much you spend on frivolous shit. You make the decision on how you want to use your money. I highly recommend at least coming once in your life, even if it's just for a month or 2 to visit. There's so much to do and see, and like I said, it's not that expensive. My name is DJ. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you in the next video.